It means that the marketing 101 stuff that we've taken for granted is critical. Our message has to be even more disciplined today than it was yesterday. Now, this is actually a point of contention. There's some out there that would say, oh no, the social web lets your message be more fluid. And I could not disagree more. Okay, because at the end of the day, if we're in the business to be selling products or services, we have to understand the value that we're selling. And we have to be able to easily articulate that value to our audience. So I would argue that having a disciplined message is even more important on this platform than it was yesterday. You got to know your buyer, right? I mean, it's like a game of Where's Waldo, right? And you have to know what he's wearing so you can go find him, right? Even more important today than yesterday because of this notion of being able to engage him and identifying him so I can engage him. All right? Telling the story is critical. I love Norman Rockwell, especially this painting, right? Because you know just by looking at this thing exactly what the story is here, right? We have to articulate our story to the buyer that reinforces our message again and again. Okay, that's just a must. If we're going to have that directional communication with our client base, then it's got to be a story that we want to tell around the value that we know they care about. And then lastly, you know, I was in college in the late '80s, and Calvin was popular at the time. I loved Calvin. You know, if he was around today, he'd probably be, you know, late 20s, early 30s. But he knew about relationships, right? Because they're, you know, full of trust and empathy and understanding and things like that. The Calvins of the world today are really the ones that understand how to harness these tools because the relationship matters and can be monetized even more today than ever before. It's so critical to have and establish the relationship at a macro level, okay, who your brand is, right, and at the micro, at the individual customer level, okay. All right, how do I do that? Well, I do that with content. Right? I think Kristen's going to be talking about content a little later, so I'm not going to get too deep into it. But it's important to know and understand that none of this happens unless I have something to say, unless I have content to share. Okay? In fact, here's the 6 elements of content that I think are important. Excuse me. First, you have to write it or produce it. Okay, I'll give you some tips for that when we get into the second half of this conversation. Have to share it on some kind of periodic basis. All right? It has to be conversational. It has to generate dialogue. You want to gather and start building a community or participating in a community, nurture that relationship with that broader community, the ecosystem, if you will, and then ultimately convert, right, to an actual paying customer or a continuing paying customer, okay? Notice that the converts last, right? Look, the one thing that I don't think enough people tell you about is that these tools and methods, they're not going to flip the switch overnight. Okay, it's not going to just instantly reap a lot of new, whether you're retail or whether you're B2B. There's a little bit of investment up front, and the investment is because it's a contextual part of how I'm talking to my marketplace, right?